Ben is he's somebody who constantly strives for change and improves the area of the law we all love to practice in. So without further ado, I turn it over to Professor Ben Davis.
Thank you very much, Babatunde, and I'm very touched by that memory of that moment, because to be a 30-year-old at the time, I was working at the ICC, and to have an office with a view of the Eiffel Tower, like a senior partner at a big law firm in Paris like Gilles Noël would have, was pretty heady stuff, you know, and to have the opportunity to work with, oh gosh, people from 100 parties from 100 countries, arbitrators from 50 or 60 countries, and arbitrations going on around the world, and mediations going on in seats in 30 odd countries. It was an extraordinary experience, those 10 years I was there. Also the 3 years that I was down at the Institute working on training of the next generation of the people who were coming out of the fall of the Berlin Wall in Eastern Europe, but also from around the world as learning about arbitration. So thank you so much, Babatunde. It's always good to see you. And thank you all for taking a few moments here to spend some time with me today. And as you can tell by my accent, I appear to be an American. Okay, so in case you didn't know, I am. I'm going to speak a bit just now in French for the francophone people, just to say, chers amis francophones, je n'ai pas oublié la langue de Molière. J'adore la langue de Molière, mais pour cette présentation, j'espère que vous accepterez que je parlerai en anglais, sans faire un commentaire quoi que ce soit sur les mérites des deux langues. Okay, what I said for the English speakers was hello. For the English speakers, I say that I just spoke to my French colleagues here because I know of course, of Francophone Africa, and I just wanted to make sure people understand that I'm doing the presentation in English, but I am not in any way making a comment on the merits of speaking French as opposed to English, which are both languages that I deeply love. And I think of myself as a fake Frenchman after 17 years living in France, although I didn't get French nationality. Anyway, today we're talking about a topic that I hope will be fun for you. I mean, you have these webinars all the time that come in, and there's somebody who's got a head up there like that who starts talking, and maybe they put up a PowerPoint or something and they start going through it, and you're like, oh my goodness, here we go. Well, should I take that phone call or not? Well, I'm hoping that for a little bit here, you will just sit down and let us think together about these topics that I'm going to discuss. I'll give you my bottom line right at the beginning. My bottom line is technology, yes. Tricknology, no. So that's what is going to guide me through this presentation. And I understand I speak for about 45 minutes. So I will be, please sit back, get a cup of coffee or whatever. And hopefully I can stimulate. And in many ways, it's more about not so much what I say, it's about what comes into your mind to think about if I cause an idea to pop into your head. And that you should write down those ideas, because those are the ideas that you have, from your experience, developed, that hopefully I stimulate with anything that I say. Now, I want to thank ODR Africa Network for allowing me to do this. And I want to prove to everyone my African bona fides, because everyone here will say, ah, yes, this is another African American talking about stuff. So I have a screenshot that I hope will be a little fun for everybody that I will put up here. Let's see, how do I do that? I got to share content. Where do I go to my place? Whiteboard, okay. All right, well, we'll go to iCloud Drive. Okay, I guess that's what I need to do. Oh, SharePoint, okay. Interesting, the technology, okay. Select photos. All right, let's see. See if I can select a photo. So here is a photo of me that hopefully we will see. There's another one from back then, and they will show you. They will hopefully come up. And can you see them, or only select number of photos? Okay, I don't know. Can you see that photo? Oops.
Not yet.
Okay, how about now? Can you see that photo? Oh, I guess it didn't.
We can.
You cannot see it?
We can see the, well, I can
We
see a
can
front.
see it.
We can,
Do you see a little boy? Do you see a little
Yes,
boy?
we can.
All right.
Yes, we
That is
can.
me. Good.
Wow.
That is me when I was a
Wow.
little boy growing up in Tunisia, 1957, 1961. And I was actually born
Great.
in Liberia in 1955. And so the first 6 years of my life, I lived in Africa when my parents were in the foreign service there. And so I like to say that I'm both an African American and an American African. So there we go. So I hope my bona fides has been developed for you. I'm going to stop the share here and go back to where we were. Switch to active speaker where I can see you all again. Here we are. Now, can you see me and I can see you? Okay. So I hope with that I have shown my bona fides as an American African, not just an African American, both of them drawing strength from each other. So I hope the folks here will appreciate that. So let us go forward from there and let's talk about our topic of today, technology and tricknology. With regards to technology, I will talk about basically the 6 classic points that every press person has to think about when they're writing something, which you all know: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then I will also speak to those things with regards to tricknology. So first of all, let's talk about, with regards to technology, who does, or who are going to do this technology. And I want to emphasize to everyone here that the creative imagination of all of you with regards to both the development of technologies that have never been dreamed of before and the implementation and making them happen makes you the protagonists of this future, this current and this future. I emphasize that because I don't know how many of you are what we call technologically savvy. I would guarantee to you that I am not. On the contrary, you just saw me have a little trouble doing my little Zoom thing here, which is a comment already. But the point I'm trying to make is there comes a time at some point where you have this thought or an idea about how things could be done with technology. And I'm saying to each of you, you are the one who will be able to make that happen. And to give you an example, where I used to work at the ICC, there was a president of the court at one time named Alain Planté. And in 1989, for ancient history for everyone here, maybe not totally everyone, but for many of you, Alain Planté looked at what we did at the court and said, we need to go to have a much more technologically developed way of managing the cases here. We had binders with papers. They were very well organized, thanks to a woman named Tia Maria de Hancock, who in the mid-70s had developed the organization of what was just papers everywhere. But we would come to a point where, I don't know if anyone here can even remember this concept of the IBM Selectric typewriter, with it had the little ball on it. And that was like magical technology at the time. My goodness, it was a revolution, you know? Well, we were those where they had the little floppy disks, if anybody remembers that kind of concept. And they had the one little line that you could see typed on the typewriters. And of course, typewriters or typing were things that were only done by secretaries. To have the idea that a lawyer would have a computer on their desk was shocked at the time. Okay, so I'm giving you just a sense of the environment in which this gentleman had this vision that we could really go farther than that. And so he looked around and said, who would like to help on this? This is a moment you will go through maybe at some point. And being smart enough to not know what you know, but also know that this is the new boss, I raised my hand first. Yes, I would like to work on this. That should be you. You say yes. You don't know how you'll do it yet. You don't know where you'll do it, but just say yes and start that. So if you're working in an organization and the organization is trying to figure out some new technology thing or what to do about something, or you might have a boss who would say something along the lines of, tell me what this internet is about, okay? Yes, you are the one who should step up at that moment. Tell me what this ODR stuff is about. Yes, that's you. And you start out with that and you work on it. So to make this for the technical folks back there who might have an appreciation of this, we were in the time of MS-DOS, okay? That is, MS-DOS is like somewhere back there in the Stone Age, probably for all. And when we were working on this, guess what happened? Windows, a technology revolution at the time, comes into being. And so you're now trying to build something at the same time as the technology is changing. That kind of moment is something that you will live all during your time of doing any work with regards to these areas. Someone somewhere in the world, maybe it's you, will come up with another angle, another way, another managed way of visioning things. You've seen Twitter, you've seen Facebook, obviously, you've seen all these other things that are developed out there and the technologies that are under it. You have everyone talking about artificial intelligence now, AI, woo, 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 oh boy, I mean, that's the new thing right now. But point I'm trying to say is that there was that moment where all of a sudden there's panic about what you've been doing before because you've been disrupted. And I remember there was a guy named Gilbert who was part of our little team on the technology side who said, hey, let me take a look at that. I think I can do something with it. And he reinvented what we were working on to turn it into something that could work in a Windows environment. Another part of this is the who that is there. On that team, there was an intern who's a French Togolese guy named Nietzsche Urasama, who was on the first team. Over the past 30 years, I think he just retired from the ICC. He ended up becoming the chief technology officer of the ICC for its worldwide operation. So you understand, going from an intern at the beginning to all the way up to running the technology for a long time. So, sorry, I had my son called me, excuse me. It was a path that maybe he didn't foresee when he started that internship yet, and he ended up being a superbly important player in technology development at the ICC. And lest I not mention her, let us talk of Mirez, because we had all these male counsel who were there, who were trying to put this together, and we realized that maybe it might be good to bring in everyone who might be working on the systems. So we contacted Mirez as an assistant, deputy counsel who accepted to work on it, and a couple of the secretaries who worked with both the councils and the deputy councils. And we became his little team, the case management team. And at different aspects of what we were working on implicated different parts of the organization. We had to figure it out together. And Mirez is like, I think at this point, if you permit me, Mirez, to call you the great grandmother, because it's not just a grandmother, but because after doing the first case management system, she went on to do the second one, which I think was called Icabaz or maybe Netcase. I can't remember its name. Which one was it? Mirez, was it Icabaz next?
Icabaz, and then afterwards the Netcase platform to give access to arbitrators and parties to their case online. Thank you, Ben, for mentioning this.
All right. So you see, from this case management system, kind of an internal system, Icabaz, to a platform of Netcase, That's the grandmother situation, and now she's in the great grandmother situation where it goes. And one of the wonderful things in my life has been for Miraz to say to me at one point in time that what we did back in 1989, 1993 is still robust. There's the magic word for all you tech people. Still robust. That's what you want to think about as you're doing this. Am I doing something that is robust, that will long last myself in terms of trying to do it the right way? Now, I'll tell you, Miraz made it go farther than anything I could imagine, because she has the ability to do at levels that I could only dream of, okay? But I'm just saying that she said it was robust. I said, okay. So that's the who. Now the question is the what. I tend to look at technology as being like a river with streams that come into it and then flow into an ocean. We used to say there were little streams of technology here and there. At this point, I think we have a Pacific Ocean of technologies that are going on out there. And of course, with climate change, the waters are rising on us. So for all of us also, with the development of technology, there's so many different types of technologies that are out there that are being developed for various reasons. The classic one, and I want to emphasize this because some people don't think of the link, is in defense, military technologies. A lot of the research and development to develop certain kinds of technologies happens as part of states trying to develop military capabilities. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Organization at back in the 70s, the people there came up with some of the ideas that developed the email. And it was basically a bunch of people who were very bright who wanted to exchange cassettes of a rock and roll group. That's how it started. Now email is ubiquitous, but there's so many other types of technologies that can develop. And if any of you are in Geneva, I would encourage you to go to the Museum of CERN, because you can go to that museum, and in that museum, apparently there is an exhibition where there is the paper written by Tim Berners-Lee, where he wrote about the idea of the World Wide Web. And that was his idea. And so that's another kind of research institution type of work. But there's also places like people just sitting in their home, in their computer and all that, looking at what technologies are out there and seeing how they might be brought together and mixed for purposes of developing something that would be ODR. Now, the next one is when. When should all this happen? Well, depending on where you are in your life, I would say now. And now at what level for you? You know, the opportunities for the ODR space seem to be particularly accelerated, obviously, since the COVID vaccine or the COVID-19 pandemic has hit us all over the world, and everyone had to switch to going virtual in some sense for what they were doing in a way that maybe they had been hesitant to do. I know here in the United States, for example, the courts in the United States had to go virtual, and there was basically a split in the courts from those that had been open to technology earlier, and they made the transitions quicker, as opposed to courts that have been more hesitant, who had to go down a learning curve dramatically, but they were forced to do it. Now, they thought that Zoom was good enough. Well, you know, Zoom is only part of the deal in all this. As Miraz could let you know in terms of how the organization of the structure of how everything is done in the online space. One of the things that I always thought was really great about online dispute resolution, particularly when we used to worry about viruses being put in or bad poisons put in envelopes and things like that, is online, you can't get sick from the virus that's there. Just your computer might get sick, but you're not going to get sick. So, you know, anyway, what I'm trying to say is now this idea of where you are and seeing what part of this ocean, the Pacific Ocean of technology, can help enhance what you do, that's something that you should do. And that should be done now. And the prospects going forward seem to be accelerating towards more and more of the use of these kinds of technologies that for dispute resolution in particular, but more broadly in society. Where is the next one for the technology? Yes, where the technology, every place we think of that we don't see technologies, we might think, well, maybe we can use this here. For example, they talk about the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things with regards to your computer, or sorry, your refrigerator or your coffee pot telling somebody that you needed information or something like that. Well, what if there's a dispute that arises about what is in there? Could there be IoT ODR, which is Internet of Things ODR, about the disputes that you have with regards to whether your coffee pot works or your fridge works? I don't know. But I'm thinking that somebody might think of something that happens there. Obviously, we think of the courts, but we think of the courts in the national court sense. In the United States, you have state and federal courts, so obviously we have those. But there are other kinds of courts. There are courts that may be like labor courts in France. We can think about the Conseil d'Etat kind of structures or other structures that countries have around the world. And of course, there are these efforts, like, for example, in Singapore, to create an investment court that would be sitting for investment disputes as opposed to investor state arbitration now. All of these are potential places. I would also suggest that the international institutions that are available, for example, the human rights institutions, are places where technology can also play a significant role. One of the most moving stories I've ever heard was about a lady whose brother was killed in Brazil in some dubious situation under oppression in her little town. And she went to a internet cafe and did a research on who she could complain to. And she found the website of the Inter-American Court on Human Rights. And she wrote an email about what had happened to her brother. And somebody at that Inter-American Court was able to take that email, turn it into a complaint, and then it became her versus Brazil with regards to the violations of treaties that Brazil had signed on human rights. And ultimately, when the case went forward, obviously with some assistance of able counsel who volunteered, Brazil admitted liability because what had happened was so outrageous to her brother, and the question ended up being a case only about damages. That would have not happened without that internet cafe and that little link for that lady. But she had tried all the exhausting her local remedies and all that stuff. So I'm trying to give you sort of a sense of where the space for this potential technology and of ODR is. Then another part of this is why. That's the why. Why are we doing this? Well, one of the things is, of course, just your human quality of wanting to do something new, something to create, the creative streak that we have, that we see in a Picasso or a Monet or a beautiful sculpture and all that. What is that part of your souls that likes to create? Or when you read an amazing book like Hans Fallada's Every Man Dies Alone. If you've never read it, read it. It tells you something about an amazing, the emotion of fear, okay? But be that as it may, there's the creative streak that's in us. And then there's a question of whether that streak gets repressed and we just let it go in the day-to-day of life. I think of Francesco Alberoni, Italian sociologist, wrote a wonderful book about movements and institutions, and talks about the moment when somebody experiences a contradiction. And when you experience that contradiction, all of a sudden an idea pops in your head, just like sort of with her Chairman Plante, his idea, the contradiction between what he saw we did and what he'd seen at the courts. We've got to do a change here, that kind of thing. And I'm saying for each of you that that creative thing that is inside of you is something that is so lucky and you're so blessed to have, and you should encourage it. And when you do it, sometimes magic happens. You will think that I'm crazy when I tell you this story, but this is really true. It happened last night. We went to a drive-in, a ciné-parc here in Virginia, and watched a movie called The French Dispatch, which has just come out. It's sort of in our car. As we were driving into the place, they warned us that this big foundation grounds, there were herds of deer that walked by. So watch out as you're driving to look out for the deer. So we watched the movie, which was okay. It was good. It's a little complicated because you had the hood of the other car that kind of cut off the screen, but it was fun. how could we hear it? Back in the day, you'd have a box you put on your mirror or on your window. Today, they say turn to a radio station, 90.7, and then you can hear it in your car. These are all kinds of things that have taken the drive in a whole nother area. Anyway, kind of playing around with my wife on the way back as we drove down this very dark road in the woods, I started to write a story and tell you out loud about going down a ruelle, you know, dans la forêt, going down a little road in the forest in the dark with only the lights of your car. And joking along, I said, as we come over a hill, there was a surprise. And guess what? Just at that moment, a deer walked across the road. So we're telling a story to ourselves, jokingly in the car, and the surprise that we were talking about actually happens in our story. That's the magic of the creative space. You don't know how you're connecting with different things, but all of a sudden, and until today, I'm still amazed by that moment that we were joking around a story and literally the surprise happened. So we started to make a story about that deer we called Patapoof or Pitapoof or something like that. Anyway, that creative thing I want to encourage, because it is your special creativity that has put you, that will provide something to humanity. Now, in addition to that, there are, you know, the old terrestrial requirements of military use, that technologies that are there, how they can be exported into broader domains like here in online dispute resolution or otherwise. Don't assume that they're just, you know, something that is only supposed to be left in that sector, because quite honestly, the people in that sector are always looking to expand their product selection and their customer bases. And there may be other ways that their technology can be used. Obviously, there's the commercial space that we talk about here. I've talked to you about the research space. In all of these different spaces, there are the whys of this creativity. Why are we doing it? Because my hope is that with what you do, you help, particularly in online dispute resolution, help to develop peaceful means of dispute resolution, whatever the kind of dispute it is, whether it's a local dispute, national, international, whatever form you're using, whether it's sort of customer service for a company, which is a whole dispute resolution mechanism through negotiation, mediation, arbitration. Why? Because it's a way for us to resolve disputes peacefully. And why is that important? Because everyone here at some point in their life has experienced the alternative and has some sense of the disputes that arise that cause the alternative. And so finding ways that people can resolve their disputes are important. Now, one of the problems that happens, like a friend of mine named Colin Rule told me when he was putting together the system of dispute resolution for PayPal, was that the internal management was upset because all of a sudden they had all these disputes that they had to deal with. Well, you know, why are you creating disputes? And Colin Rule perceptively said these disputes were out there. There just was not a mechanism for them to be addressed. And so what we've done is created a mechanism for those disputes that are real disputes that affect things like reputation, whether somebody wants to do something or not. All of those things are out there and they're real. As to how, the how is the last one. And that one is basically the simple idea of the combination of this creative energy and the resources with regards to how that energy is used. In that, I have to speak a little legally about intellectual property. As you develop your wonderful ideas and make them happen, remember, this is your intellectual property and you need to protect yourself with whatever you do. Because if you don't, you will be giving away something that maybe you didn't intend to give away. If you intend to give away, that's fine. For example, when I created the international competitions for online dispute resolution, I came up with an acronym called ICODER. So that was my intellectual property. Oh boy, you know, I had it. And so at one point there was the effort to create the International Council of Online Dispute Resolution. Guess what that acronym would be? ICODER. Oh my goodness. And so there was some delay. And I said to them, hey man, take it. I don't want it. It's free. You know, having learned from Tim Berners-Lee that what can happen when you give things away can create magic for all of us, right? And so iCoder is now, I don't know if anybody is registered in that. There are people out there who are saying to me, oh, Ben, you should have done this, that, and the other. No, it's okay to give things away. You create amazing moments like Tim Berners-Lee, but it's also okay to protect yourself because your creativity is special to you and you need to think about it as you work on it and make sure the ducks are in line, because there are people who will say things to you, hey, we can do this for free, no problem. We'll do it for you for free. And unless you make it clear that they get no intellectual property in what they're doing for you for free, guess what? They get some kind of rights in it. And I know there are different intellectual property regimes with authors' rights and moral rights. And all. I'm not going to go into all of that more before you know more about it than I do. But what I'm trying to say is there's a famous line from a Dave Chappelle comment about himself as a comedian in the United States where somebody said to him, quite honestly, the version is, I can take it from you. I can take it from you. And you want to not be in a position where someone has that kind of power. Okay, that's the technology, who, what, when, where, and why, and how. Now, let us switch to the Tricknology. What is wrong with Tricknology? Well, when we use these technologies, the thing that I worry about is, are they really being used in a way that is not underneath having, or even more overtly having, some kind of Tricknology to it? Let me give you an example. I don't know if any of you remember the creation of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN, back in the late 90s. This was for the whole domain name system that we have here, like odrafrica.com and all that stuff. Those domain names is a high-level domain name system. And back in the day, there were all these imaginative people who would buy domain names, and you could actually get them for free, and you'd have to pay afterward. And they would buy names like, let's take a company, Coca-Cola.com, or for you Nigerians, starbeer.com, okay? And they would take that and own it. And then when Star Beer tried to create its own website, or Coca-Cola.com, and wanted to use that, it couldn't because it was owned by somebody else. And so then Star Beer would try to figure, or Coca-Cola, how to go after that person. And it would be difficult because you'd have to make a case in a court, which court, where's the person, all that stuff. So as a solution, the system of the Internet Corporation Assigned Names and Numbers domain name dispute resolution system was put in place that ties together all of the registries in the world and registrars in the world for domain names up to the top level domains. And in that, there's contract. And in that contract, whenever you got a domain name, you agreed that you would accept a system that they put in place. And that system was with regards to challenges of your ownership of that domain. So what happened is that the system of the domain name dispute resolution system had a series of rules that were to be the ones that be evaluated by the neutrals in those settings. And those rules were worked out in consensus by the people at ICANN and with the various entities that were going to do the dispute resolution. What is important to think about here is that those rules, which are contractual bases for evaluating a claim, are not law. They are not law of any jurisdiction. They are a contractual construct that may or may not track actually with the rights that somebody would have had under the law of the place where they're at. And so there's a sense that someone would perceive these as being law, but in fact, all they are is contract. And the second aspect is the deciders. How do deciders get selected? Who are the deciders that get selected? After they make decisions, what happens? If a decider makes a decision against persons alleging they own the intellectual property, in other words, against the claimants, do they get renamed in other cases? Or do the ones who go against claimants end up over time not getting any more cases? How does the technology work internally in terms of who picks the next, who becomes the next person named? Is it an automatic process or is it a human process that is meaning that rather than randomly being picked, that there is actually a designation process that is done with regards to the particular type of technology? All these things are concerns that came to my mind at the time when I was looking at what was going on in that particular project. And so it's like, you have to watch out. Is there something that is truly neutral dispute resolution? Or is it really something that is non-neutral and is moving more towards what I like to call customer service? Customer service is fun. We all use customer service. It works, but we have no vision of what that is going on there as being neutral. We understand the person is working for the company and they're trying to solve my problem, but we have no sense that what we expect them to be a neutral as you go up the hierarchy. So that is one aspect of the Tricknology. Are we ostensibly presenting ourselves as neutral, but in fact, underneath, we are not? This has happened where people have been caught in these kinds of situations. There was a particular entity called National Arbitration Forum that was shut down because it turned out that all the defendants, all the plaintiffs ended up being owned by a hedge fund that owned also the dispute resolution entity. So if you were a defendant being brought into one of their arbitrations, you were actually, where the plaintiffs were all owned by the same entity that ran the center, you could see that this created an issue where they asserted, of course, online that they were neutral and all that. They're mainly consumer disputes, but it's another example where after someone pulled back the curtain on the structure of what was going on, the Attorney General of our state of Minnesota shut it down for consumer disputes because it was clear it was not neutral. And so I can't emphasize enough these kinds of concerns about Tricknology. Another kind of technology, since everyone talks about right now, is this famous artificial intelligence. One of the problems that everyone has is that they talk about this as sort of something separate from us humans. No, artificial intelligence is not somehow separate from us. It is part of us. We are the ones as humans who, with our skills, obviously use the technologies that allow us to create these artificial intelligence entities that operate with, I always like to say when I go up and get on Facebook or something like that, it's me against the Cray computer, the supercomputer. I'm going to lose that every time because they can figure out 10,000 of my behaviors and try to cause me to stay on longer and all that stuff. And that's fine. But at the heart, I think all of you have been hearing recently the term, or maybe for a while, the term algorithms, right? Algorithms, the famous algorithms, these mystery boxes that create things, right? And so there are black box algorithm visions or white box algorithm vision or gray box. Well, my thing is just make sure that your algorithm is not doing algo wrongs, okay? Because that's the thing that is the Tricknology aspect of those algorithms. What do I mean by that? Well, I don't know if you've seen with the release of these Facebook papers recently about the algorithm at Facebook. Apparently, then the calculations, then this is the human part. Whenever somebody hit one of those emojis that showed anger, the system would give that 5 units. Well, if somebody showed just medium sense, they would, medium reaction to something, maybe they'd give it 1 unit. So 5 units would lead to more information that caused them angry to go to the person because that was stimulating them to be on the space and all that. That's an example of the human intersection with the technology and designing how it's to operate, and then seeing where the algorithms takes people. And as right now, there's in different countries, I understand that there were hearings in England recently, and also there have been hearings in the United States by a particular whistleblower about these kinds of things. In fact, one of the things about tech and big tech is there is a thing called the Tech Workers Handbook that you might look at, which talks about the role of being a whistleblower in the tech industry and just how hard it is. And the people who do this are quite conscious of the fact that it's them against trillion-dollar companies, billion-dollar companies. I mean, it's and really the goal of the structure is to this entity is to help people understand what the path will be for them if they decide to complain about this or that aspect of some big tech company, they will never work again in the industry. So they have to figure out alternatives. So there are sanctions that are there. But the thing that strikes me is that the fact that there are people who are willing, because of the contradictions they experience, to come forward and be whistleblowers and tell us and warn us about these things, tells us that there is Tricknology out there, and that we don't see it because we're not on the inside does not mean that it does not exist. And so that requires a certain level of vigilance with regards to it. Now, how does Tricknology play out for us in the online dispute resolution space? And this is where I will end, because I'm coming up on my 44 seconds, according to my good friend here, Siri. How it plays out in the technology space of online dispute resolution. And for example, if there is an entity that ends up being a defendant multiple times in different types of settings, it will have information about who were the neutrals, the arbitrator, mediators in all of their cases. But if on the other side, there's only one person who's having a dispute, Mr. A in one case, Madam B in the second case, Corporation C in the third case, against that same entity, they may only have information about the person that they're dealing with in their case. So one of the questions could be, should there be something built in to what is there so that that levels the playing field in terms of people having knowledge about what this person or that person does? And sometimes there are some efforts that are being made to try to sort of quote unquote level this knowledge. There's an entity called Arbitrator Intelligence that you may have seen about that has a number of supporters that is out trying to do this. At the same time, you have to be prudent about who is giving you the information that you're sending and what is their interest. There's an article by a woman named Katie Simpson at University Law Review talking about some of these kinds of issues that can arise. So you just have to have a certain amount of skepticism, if I can say that, healthy skepticism, to make sure that as you're looking at the technology and trying to do the good things I talked about in the first half of this presentation, that you also have sufficient skepticism to try to discern, if possible, any potential Tricknology that can happen, because it can have devastating consequences for people. This is the story. I'll come back to England, which you may have known the Horizon scandal in England, with regards to all these postal workers, postal masters who lost their jobs over the last 20 years because the computer said that they were stealing money out of the till. And it turned out that there was, by the way, the English were very good at saying, it was a Japanese computer that put software, you know. I loved it. Anyway, the technology apparently had miscoded what happened. And all of these people lost their livelihoods. They could not work for 20 years. Some of them were convicted and went in prison. I know of one person who actually had a baby in prison. I mean, I'm talking about the devastation that can be done to people's lives by the Tricknology. And so the prudence that you need to have with regards to what you're doing, I end with that. So yes, technology, yes, as I said at the beginning, Tricknology, no. At that point, Babatunde, I turn it back to you, my brother.
Thank you very much, Ben. And it's been very interesting to listen to Ben, and we will take questions after. But just to sort of take a summary of where you've been, is interesting when Ben says, when we encounter new technology, ours is to put ourselves forward and see how we can develop that new technology, embrace it, use it as a mode to disrupt our surroundings. But when we do build it, that we make sure that we build what is robust. As a testament to that robustness, I can say that the technology himself and Mirez developed also that many years ago is still the technology that is still in use at the ICC today. And that technology remains irreplaceable to that institution, because that's the one I used. And I was there a long time after you, Ben, with Mirez. And I know that various other people have been trying to develop the same type of technology without much success. So the testament of dedication and robustness is important, but that is also a testament to the creativity of the people that put together that system. And you talked about the creativity and how important it is, because you have to be in an environment that allows you to create such long lasting technology, which was what I call deep vision thinking. And once we contrast that to Tricknology, the things people want to hoard, technology that doesn't really work the way it's supposed to, the technology that allows us to go round the false paths, or leads us to believe that technology will solve our ills independently of human input. We start to understand the balance that you're trying to create. Now, I'm very grateful because a lot of things you said today has enriched me a lot. And I would like to turn the floor over to everybody else to see who has any questions for Ben. Mirez, please.
Oh, I have a short comment, if you allow me, Tunde. First, I'd like to say how much Ben never ceases to amaze me. He's a living encyclopedia. Really, I mean, Ben, you should write all this, because all the history that you have shared with us is not known by everyone. And I think it's important to know where we're coming from, and hopefully how we can push forward the technology to move forward. What I wanted to say also about Ben, which is amazing, and I think it's a lesson to learn for everyone. He's always enthusiastic. He believes in projects, and he just say, yeah, let's go ahead and let's try it. And this is actually not only about his character and personality, which is always positive and it's great, but it's also the mindset we should put ourselves in order to take projects on. Because the reason for which today we don't have enough online dispute resolution is because people are afraid. People want other people to start it or to try it first. And we will never get there if people, company, funders are not courageous enough to start projects, because it's for the short, the medium, and the long term. And we need to be perseverant. We need to continue. The fact of interrupting platforms that had started make people believe that this is science fiction. And Ben has just shared with us that it's not science fiction. You just need to take it forward and believe in it. A second comment I wanted to make is about artificial intelligence. Ben, thank you for having raised the Tricknology, sorry, about that particular issue, and the danger, the risk it may create if it is not properly used. Because everyone is amazed or is enthusiastic, is wow about artificial intelligence, but you need to understand also the downsides if it's not well done. And one last comment I wanted to make is about arbitrator intelligence. So the arbitrators who are evaluated or, let's say, are evaluated by either the parties, so the council, or the wing arbitrators who have shared the same panel. So the comments made are by the users in any given case. It can't be an issue of Tricknology, not in that specific aspect, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mirez. I think if I was to reference anything, it would be when Ben says to give things away. It's always been my view in arbitration that we have to share knowledge. That's what we're doing here today. And the sharing of the knowledge, and whatever kind of knowledge, even if it's technology, it will make our systems better, would disrupt things to improve things for the many. It is for the few who have creative ideas to share that with the many to improve the life of the many. Now, I admit that a lot of what we do is to better ourselves and to make financial gain. But there are things that we also do, we must remember, that help the many, but come from the few, and those things should be shared, and those things should be free. So I'll turn the floor over to any of our attendees who want to ask any questions from Ben. Anyone? See. No comments in the section. Right. In that, just somebody had their hands up. Is that you still, Mirez, with your hands up, or is there somebody else?
I have a question for Ben, because we've been together in this field for ages. Okay. Ben, can you share with the audience, what are the reasons in your view for which so many platforms were interrupted, and why we do not have today online dispute resolution systems to resolve disputes online, not only business disputes, but also consumer disputes, civil disputes, and so on?
I have not a clear answer, but I have my own thoughts, so I'll throw this out there. I think that part of it is that we are all have been sort of used to doing things face to face, and thinking that face to face is the only way to do things. And it's the irony, of course, is that when you look at various types of dispute resolution mechanisms, many of them have a written component that is enormous. And with email and all of that, or document sharing systems and all that stuff, we actually have this huge component of these. If you look at sort of globally at these kinds of dispute resolution systems, well, this huge non-face-to-face aspect of what is done, leaving aside decisions on documents, period. But still, there's this vision of sort of like I sat in at the Supreme Court of the United States, where they have the advocate standing before the 9 judges in a physical space. That seems to have been totally understandable for most of us as being sort of the vision, or a mediator sitting down with the parties. And what's happened is that the bias, if I can call it like that, towards that is something that has infected really generations of us. I can say for the last, let's see, I've been in this area 40 years. So, you know, it's a bias that with any of us in the 40-year period. I do think that the disruption that has happened is with regards to COVID, which literally forced everyone to have to find a scramble to using some kind of technology, and some kind of technology being present in what that would mean. And I think that, which is kind of like somebody taking a stick and hitting everybody in the head with a bat, forced a lot of people to start to say, wait a minute, we've got to build this space. I would think that, for example, you would expect Zoom, right? Zoom to develop what its space is, to make it more ODR friendly as part of what they are trying to provide as a product, because their business is zoomed literally with the technology. You could see the providers of the technology trying to see with regards to what happens. Now, I see a chat message from Mr. Nderitu, with regards to the decisions. And thank you for doing that, because we are at exactly that moment. And I will give you an example. I was teaching for the Cairo Regional Center of International Commercial Arbitration, a course on online arbitration last November. And part of the course was with a fact pattern I put together, was for the members of that course to design an arbitration clause. And one of the questions that came up in the class was there was a group who wanted to say that the arbitrators shall do the arbitration with online dispute resolution. And there was another group that said may, giving the discretion to the arbitrator to be both online or offline as part of the arbitration clause. And we had a great debate among those lawyers there about whether it should be shall or may. And the conclusion was about 50-50. So we went with the may because we weren't 100% comfortable with using a shall type provision. That is the moment we live in now. That, well, what will happen with these decisions? I think there was an Austrian decision that was made with regards to a challenge that was done online. And the Austrian court said that was fine. There is I believe it's a Supreme Court of Egypt decision that at least talked about online dispute resolution as being, or use of these online technologies as being something that could be, quote unquote, tolerated, right? And so that is the period we're in now. There's also a question of, interpretations of the New York Convention language with regards to issues like the place of arbitration. Would we still need to have a place of arbitration, even though it's virtual? In other words, or the seat, so to speak, that, to make the nationality of the award operate. Can that be done in a virtual setting? I think it can. You just have, like happens many of the times, the arbitration is deemed to be done at this seat. And that is put at the end of the award. And now we know it's a French award for purposes of the New York Convention. But there are countries in the world that would maybe require that the arbitrators actually physically go to that physical place and sign the award there. So it's the friendly, or maybe you can call it ODR friendly or unfriendly nature of the legal regimes that are all themselves going through this process of, again, the water of technology is flowing at their doors. It is rising. It is coming under the doors, and they're having to figure out what to do with this water. Are we going to make the doors tighter, or are we going to channel this in a way? So that's why I'm optimistic, Mr. Nderitu, that we are going through that period where some will move it ahead and say this will be fine. Some will be a little more hesitant. And in those settings, I would be hesitant to use, at least for arbitration. I don't see why it couldn't be used for mediation. Hope that answers your question, sir.
And if I add a little to what Ben has said, I was at the forefront when the pandemic hit. And the idea that all the awards we signed, some of which we used innovative ways to sign because the arbitrators couldn't leave their homes. They couldn't even get paper to print the awards. So the awards some of them had to be issued in electronic form, which then doesn't conform with the seat requirements in many ways. The parties, I think, will be the people who advance those types of embrace of technology. And I think it's already happening. I think the people who do not get on the boat as the river comes through, as Ben said, will be left on shore and they will be behind the times. So I think we've already hit an epoch with COVID, and it's how we continue to embrace that epoch, because some people want to row the time back, but I think that, so to speak, the ship has already sailed.
I can't resist making some comments, if I may, Tunde. Ben is just teasing me with so many comments, and you too. I just wanted to speak about the Austrian decision. The Austrian decision was about the possibility of holding a hearing virtually, and that was the decision from the Austrian courts. And the reason for which I'm raising this comment is because of the confusion that people make between virtual hearings and online dispute resolution. Using a platform for virtual hearing is not doing arbitration online. It's completely different. Making an arbitration online or conducting an arbitration online requires that most of the procedure be conducted online, whether a hearing is held virtually or not. I think it's important simply to share this comment about the distinction. And I agree with you, Ben. The fact of having a place of arbitration, we know, was always meant to determine the jurisdiction at which the award would be attached. Now, one last comment regarding ODR. Maybe we should also remember that online dispute resolution is not only for business and for arbitration. And we need to remember that also there are many consumer disputes, civil disputes that may be resolved online without being an award. Therefore, you don't need the New York Convention. What we need to offer to billions of people who are deprived from remedies is really a platform where they can resolve these disputes online without needing to go to courts. If the resolution of the dispute doesn't work, they can still take the case to court, but they don't need to go through the fuss of an entire procedure if resolving disputes online is possible, like the eBay disputes, as you know, Ben, and the PayPal disputes and so on. And the reason for which also I think this has not happened so far, at least with eBay and PayPal, it is happening. But the fact of not succeeding to offer resolution of consumer disputes and civil disputes online is probably because of the dissemination, which is lacking, education of users, dissemination, publication about the decisions that have been rendered in order to show that it works, and also people to believe in such platforms, to fund them and not to stop. Unfortunately, there are many platforms that start and stop because of lack of funding. So there are many things that can be done. And thank you for all the interesting comments. Sorry for weighing in all the time, but it's so interesting.
No, and if I can just add something on that, is like on the Tricknology, here's my little cell phone here. Okay. So, this is an iPhone 13. Is that do you have to have an i13 in order to use the technology, or can this not be good enough and you have to have an iPad, or you have to have a computer? I mean, which level the technology allows for you to be able to use something is part of the decision of the strategy of what kind of the ODR technology is going to be used. I also want to tell you that I agree 100% with Mirez. I've had hassles where the system will send me to some kind of chat place for that particular provider, and I'm chatting with somebody anonymously, like my telephone provider, and I don't know them, they don't know me, and it's just a text-based discussion, and my problem gets solved. Okay, I am doing ODR, but in a text-based setting that is completely online without having to see anybody's face. And I think many people don't realize that they're already there when they do these things already as part of resolving that, as opposed to going into the store and talking to people about things. So just want to throw that out there.
Superb. Thank you both very much for sharing your knowledge, which is quite deep in this area of law. I am grateful for your time. I'm also grateful to ODR Africa to allow us to share this kind of knowledge and bring experts in this area together. Thank you so much for your time. And I think our time is up. So this is the end. Goodbye and good evening, everyone.
Could I just add one thing, which is that if anybody has any further questions, please do not hesitate to send them to me. For me, any of the various emails I have, if you Google my name, but I'll use BGD. Oh no, I can't remember that one for UIC, but ben.davis@utoledo.edu or benspecialdavis@gmail.com. Happy to answer any questions if we didn't get to them. And hopefully there's some ideas that popped into your head. And if you love to talk about them, happy to do it. So just wanted to Godspeed to everybody. Merci, les francophones également.
Merci beaucoup, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye,
Thank
Ben.
you.
Bye, Tunde.
Bye-bye.
Bye.